All right, so I want to talk about the service learning project for CSE 222 for winter quarter. So this is a new component to the sequence. Sometimes we start this in fall, but for this year we're starting this in winter. So the service learning project is basically a long-term project, something that you're going to work on for approximately half a year throughout this course and 223 in spring. And it's an opportunity to take on some large project and pursue it from initial idea through developing the requirements, assessing how much progress you can make, setting up a timeline for when you're going to reach certain milestones, and ultimately, developing some deliverables and then presenting those at the end of this quarter and the end of spring quarter to the college community. So this is a large undertaking. It's a pretty standard part for a lot of computer science curriculums. At university, you'll spend a whole year doing something called a capstone project. Same idea. And the goal of the service learning project is to basically give you an opportunity to get some experience outside of your normal classroom activities. So in your classroom work, you work on homework, you work on programming assignments or physics problems or whatever, and that's great, that's important, that helps you learn the basic engineering skills, the physics, the computer science, the math, and so on. The service learning project takes you beyond that, though. It gets you into questions of project management, expectation setting, monitoring progress, setting reasonable goals, adjusting goals, responding to unexpected situations, dealing with unknowns, figuring out how to teach yourself things that you need to know, figuring out what you need to know. All of these skills that employers find really, really valuable. And when you're competing for jobs and you've got good grades, 20 other people are applying for the job, they have good grades also. This can be something that really sets you apart. And in an interview, this is something you can just start tell me what you did in college. Well, you can start talking about this project that you did and everything that was involved in making it work and everything that you learned and what you did with it after the courses ended and so on and so forth. This can be a real good talking point, and a good opportunity to demonstrate in measurable ways your worth to a prospective employer. So Service Learning Project is part of 222 and it'll continue in 223. It's one project you're going to work on throughout the two courses. So we've got 10 courses in winter. We've got 2 or 3 weeks break in between. We've got a week of finals. We've got 10 weeks in spring. So this is about 22, 23 weeks. So almost half a year you're going to be working on this project. Should be a fairly large undertaking. And on the syllabus, you can see Service Learning Project. It's got 3 components to it. The SLP total counts 10% of your final grade in this course. And that 10% is broken up into 3 pieces. Your proposal, which we're going to talk about right now, which is due on the 11th, so that's in 1 week, that's 25 points out of 100. Your final upload at the end of all of this, which will be week 9, will be another 25 points. And then the last Tuesday of the course, there'll be a 2-hour expo that you'll come to and present your idea, your progress so far, and your future plans to the college community, and that's worth 50 points. So there's these 3 components, and the first one is due in a week, and that's the proposal. So we're going to go through the proposal in a fair amount of detail. But obviously, before you can propose your project, you have to think of what your project is going to be. And that's probably the biggest challenge right now, is figuring out what's a reasonable project to work on. So number 1 requirement, it should be something you're interested in. Don't pick a project that you don't care about. Don't pick a project that sounds boring just because it sounds like, I can take care of my proposal by writing up this idea, right? Try to pick something that you're going to be passionate about, something that you're going to want to come out of class and start working on right away. Something that you'll have to tear yourself away from in order to do your other classwork. That would be the ideal, right? And project-based learning is so much more powerful than, you know, homework-based learning, lecture-based learning. When you're doing, you're going to learn a lot more than when you're sitting and watching someone do or listen to someone describe something. So projects are key, right? They were a key part when I was an undergrad. We were always working on projects. And this is a chance to, you know, work on a project of your choosing and that you get credit for, right? Something that's actually required as part of the curriculum. So you want to try to find a project that's interesting to you. You may already have such projects in mind. You may already have things that you're working on when you take a break from school, right? So those could be good ideals. If you want other ideas, you can go to engrcs.com. So that's our standard department website. Come down under ECS Club and scroll to the bottom, and you'll see sample of past student projects. So this is just a few examples of things that students have worked on for their service learning project. And you can look around these, click on the ones that seem interesting, but they should give you a basic idea of some of the kinds of things that could be done for an SLP. So, you know, Wi-Fi controlled robots, educational micro robot, sun seeker, and so on and so forth. If you're in the STEM building, there's a hallway leading up to the Nerd Cave, and that's covered with posters. And each of those posters shows the summary of some student or group of students' service learning project. And so you can get more ideas from there. And you're welcome to talk to me about ideas you have if you're not sure what to do, but there's some area that you're interested in. Come by office hours and let's have a conversation, and we can figure out, you know, if and what you can take out of that into a service learning project. But spend some time thinking about this. It's something you're going to be working on for, you know, half a year. It's going to be, you know, 10% of this course grade, probably 10 or 15% of your course grade in spring. So it's not something to, you know, just scratch out on the back of a napkin and be done with. It's something you want to really put some thought into and really kind of commit yourself to. And you don't want to keep changing your project, right? You're going to pick a project right now. You're going to submit a proposal for it a week from today. And that's going to be pretty much it. That's going to be what you're going to work on. Now, you can make adjustments to it. You can change the scope. You can add things, remove things, and so on. But I don't want you to come back every 3 weeks and say, I've got a new idea for a project, right? Because we want continuity. We want a long-term effort on this. So take a look at some of these examples and kick around ideas amongst yourselves, and come by office hours if you want to ask about specific ideas, and we can talk about those. So let's look at your first deliverable. So your first deliverable is a formal report proposing your idea. Okay? And I'm giving you on Canvas an outline of some of the topics, but this is not what you're going to turn in. Okay, I want to make sure everybody's clear on this. You are turning in a formal written report. Think of this as an English class, and somebody says, write a report on, you know, the State of the Union at the time that Lincoln was president, right? Well, you're not just going to make a bullet list and fill in something next to each item, right? You're going to have a cover sheet with a title and your name and the date and so on. You're going to have an introduction. You're going to develop some ideas and so on and so forth. You're going to have a conclusion at the end. That's what you're turning in here, okay? Think of it as an English class. Think of it as an essay assignment. You're turning in a report, just like a lab report. So I do not want you to take this piece of paper and just add some words after each of these elements. If you do that, you're probably going to get a 0 on the proposal, right? And that's 25% of the SLP grade. So this is just an outline, right? And I'm going to go through these because these are some of the things you'll want to include in your report, right? But one more time, your report is a full formal report. Title page with a cover sheet, introduction, description of your project, all of these details included in there. You don't need to have, you know, a section called project description, a section called this, a section called that, but I want all of this information contained in the report. A well-written report will probably be at least a few pages long. If you turn in a one-pager, you're not going to get a good grade on it. So you need to spend some time thinking about your idea and thinking about each of these components of your proposal. So I want to go through these in more detail now. So obviously you got to put your name on the front of the report, the class CSE 222, the date you're writing it. Come up with a project name. Doesn't have to be fancy. It can be descriptive or it can be something, very elaborate sounding. Totally up to you. Just something that you can use to refer to this project down the road. Partners, you're allowed to work in groups of up to 3 people. If you want to work with more than 3 people, come and talk to me and we'll figure out if that makes sense. But you can work with other people. In that case, each person turns in their own report. Okay, just like doing a lab with lab partners, you can do the work together, but you each turn in your own report. So each person's going to turn in their own proposal. But I want to see the names, full names of everybody that you're working with. And make pretty sure that if you're going to work with somebody, it makes sense to work with them, right? Don't take this lightly because this is 10% of your grade. And I get students who come to me, week 8 and say, hey, my proposal, for my SLP was to work with so-and-so and they were going to do half of the project and they've never written back to my emails and I don't know what to do, right? Figure that out ahead of time, right? When you talk to somebody and you say, hey, do you want to work on an SLP together? Make sure you both have a common understanding of what that means. Are we going to work on this every week or are we going to leave this until the end and then do a panic job at the last minute, right? Are we both going to develop these ideas or are we going to split the project in half? How often are we going to get together and talk? How are we going to talk? Are we going to do email? Are we going to do Zoom? Are we going to get together in person? Make sure all of this stuff is understood up front before you agree to work with somebody. All right, and then if you're working with partners, list them in your report. So all of this information can kind of be, on the cover sheet if you like. And then tell me about your project. And this should be a significant portion of your report. Describe your project, as much detail as you can. Now, if this is a new project, you don't have all the details worked out. But you need something more than, I'm going to make a video game. Right? You've got a week to figure out more of the details. What kind of video game? What system are you going to put it on? What's the gameplay going to look like? Is this going to be modeled after some other existing game or similar to some existing game? What type of platform is it going to run on? What kind of interactions are the user going to have? Are they going to have special hardware? Is it going to work from a keyboard or a keyboard and a mouse or a gamepad or a headset? Right? Fill in the details. Right? And again, it's a formal report. Don't just say project description, game, platform, PC, right? That's not a report. So for my service learning project, I would like to learn how to do game development, and I would like to demonstrate those skills by writing a game in Unity. My hope is to have a 3D immersive environment where users move around and interact with et cetera, et cetera. And develop it as fully as you can in 1 week. And a lot of what we're going to do in this quarter is further develop these ideas, dig deeper into them, start, doing some of the initial design, start doing some of the development. And the goal is that by the end of winter quarter, that's this quarter, you've got a really, really solid foundation to build on throughout spring, which means all of the details of what you want to do are worked out. You understand what the time scale is going to be, what the prices of materials are going to be, what you're going to have to do to be able to accomplish this work, and so on and so forth. So as much description as you can. We expect you to be doing something that you don't already know how to do. If you've been writing video games since you were 12 years old, don't say I'm going to write a video game and knock it out in 2 days, right? This is supposed to push you beyond what you're already capable of. So what are the most challenging elements in the project you're proposing, and what do you expect to learn in doing this project? Really think about this, right? Because if there's no learning outcome for you, it's probably not a good fit for an SLP for you. It might be great for somebody else with different background and experience. But for you, you want to make sure that you're starting with, something close to where you are and building beyond that. So talk about the most challenging pieces of the project. Talk about what you expect to learn. Service components. So SLP is a service learning project. And service can be pretty much anything, right? If you make a video game, well, it helps people because it gives students an opportunity to relax and unwind. If you're making a doorbell that makes your phone buzz when someone comes to the door, well, it makes it easier to know when someone arrives at the door because you always have your phone with you and it doesn't make noise, right? So I mean, you can turn almost anything into a service project, but spend some time thinking about, what is the potential benefit of this project to others. If this is a new project, you won't have past progress to talk about, but it may be a project you've already started working on. If that's the case, talk about what you've done so far with this project in the past, where you've gotten to. Have you made changes from what you originally envisioned? Are you planning to extend this in some new directions, and so on and so forth? And that's tied in with the current status of the project. If it's a new project, you can just say, this is a new project, so the status is I'm just starting off right now. But again, if it's something you've been working on, how far have you gotten it? How long have you been working on it? Have you been working on it, this quarter, over break and so on, or is it a project you started a year ago and then left for half a year, and so on? And then there's milestones. And this should almost certainly be a separate section of your report. Milestones are basically a way to mark your progress throughout the project. So think about this, it's a half-year project. Let's suppose you're starting from nowhere, and your goal is in half a year you've got a playable side-scroller video game, right? How are you going to know during those next, 20-some weeks whether you're on target or not to finish your project by the end of June, or by the end of the June spring quarter? So we set up milestones, we set up very specific goals along the way. And these goals have to be measurable. They have to be something that when the milestone is due, you can look at your progress and say, yes, I've accomplished my milestone, or no, I haven't, or I can't tell, right? I need to be more specific in my milestones. So let me give you some examples. Let's say your goal is to build a side-scroll video game by the end of June quarter for the June Project Expo. I want at least one milestone for halfway through this quarter. So you've got the idea, you're writing a proposal for, developing a video game. What might you want to have done by the middle of this quarter? Maybe you want to pick out, what game system you're going to use. I'm going to build this in Unity. I'm going to build this Unreal. I'm going to build this from the ground up, just writing it in Java. I'm going to make this work on a PC. I'm going to make it work on a PlayStation. I'm going to try to make an Android app, right? And maybe by halfway through the term, I want an outline of the basic gameplay. What's the basic storyline? How many different types of interactions are going to be available? What are the enemy players going to be like? What's the scoring system? Are there going to be power-ups? What kind of power-ups? So maybe by midterm, right, some collection of those things you want to have figured out in some amount of detail, right? Well, don't just say, I'll figure out some of the initial details, because that's not measurable. So, I want a sketch of the maze layout for the first level, and I want to have decided on 3 different types of power-ups. And I want to have gotten an initial system playing where a player can move through a maze by using WASD on a keyboard, right? That's a measurable goal, a more measurable goal. And then by the end of the term, I want the user to be able to move around a maze using WASD on a PC keyboard, and I want them to be able to fire bullets by hitting the space bar, and I want randomly generated enemies to appear, and if they get hit by a bullet, they disappear. So make these milestones things that can be measured. And for this report, you need at least one milestone for partway through the term, and you can pick where midterm is. I would suggest around week 5 or week 4, but one specific milestone at least, and at least 2 specific milestones for the end of the term. So by the time the Project Expo comes along on such and such a date, and you can find the date in Canvas, I would like to have these pieces of the game implemented to this degree. I'd like to have the user be able to interact in these ways, and I'd like these things to happen. Right? And these should be things that make sense to you in order to get your project done. If you've never done game development, maybe you'll put a separate term in here and say, you know, by week 3 of the quarter, I want to have gone through this particular tutorial that I found on YouTube that that discusses how to create a basic side scroller in Unity. And so your milestone is, you know, I want to have completed that course and followed the steps and have my own side scroller running by the end of week 3, right? That's clearly measurable. At the end of week 3, you can say, did I do that or not? If you did, you're on target. If you didn't, then you're behind schedule, and maybe you need to adjust the pace at which you're working, or maybe you need to adjust your milestones. Maybe you need to adjust your final goal. Right? So these avoid some of the surprises that happen when a project is due and you say, oh, I haven't started this project yet and it's going to take 200 hours of continuous work to get it done and it's due tomorrow, right? So that's a bad surprise. All right, so specific milestone, at least one of them for halfway through this quarter, at least 2 of them for the end of this quarter, and then at least 2 milestones for future terms. This would be for spring. And these will be a little more general because until you get through this quarter, you may not have as clear an idea of what you're going to do in spring quarter. But try to set up some general targets and add as much detail to them as possible. Again, all of this is minimum, right? You're allowed to put in more. Put in as many milestones as makes sense for your project. And then maybe thinking about those milestones, write some paragraphs about major challenges you anticipate and how you plan to address them. For example, I'm going to develop this video game. Well, I've never done video game development. I don't know anything about video games except I like playing them. So, well, I'm going to have to learn something about Unity. And so I'm going to go through this course that I found online. Well, the game system I'm using involves C++, and I know C and I know Python, but I don't know C++, so I'm going to have to learn some C++. How am I going to do that? Am I going to take an online course? Am I going to get a book? Am I going to sit down and start writing some code? What's my plan for that? And I'm going to need to be working in a Unix environment, and all I have is a Windows machine. So what am I going to do about that, right? So what are some of the challenges you anticipate, and what are your plans right now for addressing them? And then talk some about the project itself that you've chosen. For example, why did you choose this project? And this is an opportunity to kind of think more deeply about why you're agreeing to undertake this particular service learning project. So why did you make this choice? Is it something you've been craving knowledge about? Is it something that you've already been working on and you want a chance to finish it? Is it something that you picked because you were bored of thinking about this whole SLP business and this seems like an easy thing to go with, right? So think about why you're choosing this project. And you can talk about, you know, whatever aspects you want of this. What are your specific interests that relate to this project? Hopefully this is not something totally random, right? Hopefully this is something that ties in with, you know, what you're trying to do in school, what you like doing in your out of school time, what you want to do in the future. So how do all of those things tie into this choice of project? What do you hope to learn from this project? Because it's a learning project, right? That's the L in SLP. What do you expect to learn from it, and how do you think this is going to help you and your education? So this section is talking more about, you know, sort of your choice of project and why that makes sense to you. All right. So I'm not worried about, you know, what do you call your different sections of your report? What font do you use? What margins do you use? I'm not worried about that. I'm interested in content, right? But I want this to be a full formal report, not just a bullet list of these things with words added to the end of them, right? So write it like, you know, a proposal, like you would a lab report, for example. And submit that through Canvas by the due date, which is on the 11th. So SLP proposal is due at midnight on the 11th, and you upload it as a PDF. If you have questions about this, ask in class or come by office hours and ask me there, and we can certainly talk about different ideas you might have, and I can help you try to figure out a project that's going to work well for you. All right, that's the SLP synopsis. Thanks. Talk to you all later. Bye.